Hello everyone and welcome to ZP Productions, and today I'll be reviewing the brand new Canon RF 135mm f1.8 IS. Now this is the part 1 of the review because I just got this lens yesterday. I managed to do a photo shoot and also do some testing. So I'll share you my findings because this lens is very new, it just came out. Some of you will be on the fence and I hope that this part 1 review will help you. Now, this is a 135 1.8. It is not a very, I'll say, as popular a lens to me than the 85. But weirdly, worldwide, there's very little stocks. I saw BH Photo is sold out. My retailer, SLR Revolution, reserved this copy for me to test, and if I liked it, I bought it. So I went to the shop and I tried out a few shots, and they were really good. I'll talk about it in image quality section here. Now, this is my third 135. I have sold the last 2 135 just 1 month ago. In fact, for the Sigma, I got it at a very good price, while the Sony, I bought it secondhand and sold it secondhand and lost nothing on it. But that said, both of those lenses are really affordable in Singapore, and both of them combined together is just slightly more expensive than the Canon version here. The Canon version here is really costly at 3.4k Sing dollars. It is the price of the US converted at tax, at shipping. And I still think, depend on exchange rate, a little bit more. So you're paying quite a big premium if you're buying this lens at launch in Singapore. But there's no stocks, as I said. So even if you want to buy it now, they are quite hard to come by. But enough of that, let's talk about the lens itself. Why did I buy this third 135? Now, the Sony version, I will just explain very easily, is that I didn't quite like the image stabilization from it. I didn't quite like the close focusing of Sony. I mean, if you have seen my other videos, I always do complain about Sony's close focusing. They have a tendency to detect anything but the iris, anything that comes near the iris to detect it. So with a 135, which is begging to be always used for half body and lesser, that problem is, I would say, amplified, and it kind of irritates me, so I don't use that as much. And then image stabilization on Sony systems are quite, in no better words, quite poor compared to other systems today. When you use it for night shoots, the 135 on the Sony cannot go below 150 for portraiture easily, unless your subject is totally not moving. But that's not the biggest issue. You yourself must not shake, and you must use single point AF. You cannot use continuous AF. Single point AF, the best you can go is maybe 150 of a shutter or 140. So if you have seen my other reviews, that's how I feel about Sony IS system. Sigma is very simple, it's big, it's chunky, it's too long. With the adapter, I couldn't fit this camera and the lens into my bag, and it is really heavy, so I didn't use it as much. So going back to the RF now, the RF, as you can see here physically, it is long. Let me dismount it. If I was to put it side by side with the 50 1.2, you can see that it is significantly longer. Mounted on the camera, you can see it is really a long lens. Slap on the hood, it is even longer. This is a really long lens, but it's not heavy. The weight of this lens is very similar to the 50 1.2 here. In fact, I believe that this is the lightest 135, lighter than the Sony version by 15 grams. Not a big deal, that's a weight of a filter, but well, Canon can claim that they have the lightest lens here. But that said, they come with quite a lot of things. I mean, for being light, it still comes with 2 buttons that you can nicely use. I like how Canon put the buttons. They put it really for landscape and portrait. There's 2 switches here, AF, MF, and OIS. This lens for 135mm is the only one with OIS. Now, Canon's way of implementing OIS is that it will work with the body to give an image stabilization to the lens itself. So it is a very stable platform. I will talk about it more on the stabilization in the next chapter. But overall, I think this lens, for its weight, its size, it is delivering a lot of things. Now, the control ring in front here, and then the focusing ring here. My only, I guess, question is, why do they put the control ring so in front, and they put such a loud click to it? I mean, if you are using it as a click ring, most likely as an aperture ring, It's a little bit too forward. I would have preferred the back for aperture. It's more natural. So I'm not too sure why they put it there. But that's it. This is pretty much the lens physically. I think it is a nicely built lens. Very similar to any RF lens today. It is quite heavy, quite chunky, and it is quite nice. Of course, this lens is a weather sealed lens. Canon claims it to be, and it has flooring coating on the front element. Now, the hood itself is the type I like, which has the button lock, and it is very stable. Now, this hood, right, the only thing I would say is the Sony version is better is that it has a felt inner lining which feels more premium, and also it has a rubber coating in the front. The Canon version doesn't have both of them, so it feels less premium, but the Canon version is longer. I don't have the Sigma and the Sony versions here anymore. I sold them away, but I can tell you that this hood here is definitely longer and deeper. Okay, that's about it for physical. Let's talk about image stabilization. Now, one of the biggest reasons I bought this lens was its image stabilization. This lens will allow me to handhold in low light a lot better than the other 135 f1.8. You may be wondering, why does that matter? Well, it is really nice to shoot portraits in low light, and I always wanted to shoot longer focal lengths in low light. But longer lengths in low light require you to have better image stabilization, if not a tripod. And tripods make your whole workflow a lot slower. So this lens, in my own internal testing, you can shoot at 110 and still obtain 90% sharpness. In fact, I shot 21 shots, and out of 21 shots, 18 were sharp, like sharp. So this lens is very impressive. 18 out of 21 sharp photos. And then at 1.5, it gives you 50% keeper rate. That will be about 20 shots, 10 shots were sharp and usable. So it does show that the inbuilt image stabilization is better than not having one. Because I did the same test with my 85 1.2, and I can tell you that the hit rate of the 85 1.2 is about the same. But don't forget, there's an 85 and this is a 135. So that is the difference. It achieves good image stabilization for a 135mm lens. Now, if you compare this to the Sigma and the Sony, I will tell you that this definitely outperforms both of them. The question is how much? And sadly, I don't have both on hand now. I can just very safely say that the Sigma on the Canon system would be about maybe 20% less effective than this lens, while the Sony one will be about 50% less effective, which means that, let's say, if I'm shooting at 110, I'm guessing, based on my experience with Sony, you can probably only get a keeper rate of maybe 60%. So next, I will talk about image quality. Now, image quality on this lens, well, it will not be a long section. Firstly, image quality on the lens is pretty good. It is very sharp corner to corner. I mean, I could focus on the corner, as in this photo here, and you can read the text on those boxes. It is that sharp. There is no hazing, no fogging, no chromatic aberrations in those photos, shot at the corner itself. And then I went out and shoot outside my window. Now, this is where the impressive thing comes in. Shot at 1/13th of a shutter, it is sharp. Like really, really sharp. And in this photo, you can see that there is no chromatic aberrations, even on light tubes with black background, which is like a chromatic aberration magnet. There is no chromatic aberrations. There's also a shot where the tubes were slightly off focus. Now, it's slightly off focus because this is a night shot outdoor and it was continuous AF. There is no loca. At least I don't see any hazing, any glow, any color tinge. So I can say that CA control on this lens is fantastic. In terms of chroma, I did notice that there is no chroma. I went to the corner, look at the small little dots, no chroma. And overall, the sharpness for this night shot was really good. If I compare this to my review of the Sony, I think this is quite on par with the Sony, at least based on what I saw so far. The Sigma has a little bit of hazing when it comes to the light tubes. No chromatic aberration, but a little bit of hazing. This guy, together with the Sony, has no hazing and is really sharp to the corners. I don't have the Sony on hand now, so all I can say is that based on my experience, this lens should be at least as sharp as the Sony in every single aspect. And that's important because Canon is charging a higher price for this in Singapore. Now in the US, they are the same price. But for some reason, Singapore Sony is selling it at 2.5K, so don't ask me why. Then let's talk about its bokeh balls. Well, I show you the out of focus here. There is no onion ring. In fact, this is very interesting. It's a very nice smooth ball with a little bit of outline, but that's about it. Then when it comes to sun stars, you can take a look at the photo here. I do not know whether it's a good sun star or a bad sun star. You make a decision and tell me, is it a good one? And that shot was handheld, even though it's high ISO, but I shot it at really low shutter speed. This is where the Canon with its IS system really shines. So next I'll talk about real world shooting with this lens, and this is really nice to use. I did a night shoot. I purposely did a night shoot using LED lights so I can shoot at very low shutter. This on purpose. And I want to test this camera. Can it shoot on very low shutter with continuous AF, and what's the outcome like? So I shot most of these shots here with the R3 and the 135 on continuous AF with mechanical and electronic shutter. I noticed for this system at least, between mechanical and electronic, there is really not much difference. Unlike the Sony, the A1 must be used with electronic. Mechanical has a very high shutter shock. But for the Canon here, I noticed there's no difference between either of them. And I could shoot as low as 1/15 of a shutter and still obtain about 40 to 50% keeper rate, which means 3 shots, most likely one shot will be sharp and another shot will be usable, but not super tech sharp, that kind of feeling. But I, in the end, settled at 1/25 and I get about more than 50%, about 60% keeper rate for this particular lens here at 1/25 of a shutter with continuous AF. This is how impressive it is. And let me show you a zoom in. It is still very, very, very sharp at 1/25 for a shutter. Those shots that I chose, in this selection here, 54 out of the hundreds of them. By the way, there's 100 because there's all my test shots. The photo shoot itself, I think I only shot like 70 plus. So 50 of these are sharp, really, really sharp. And this is how impressive the image stabilization is. So in the end, what's my initial summary of this lens? Now, this lens is expensive in Singapore, but it is fantastic. It is great. And Canon's implementation of IS is really, really good. Together with the continuous AF, you really don't need to worry about focusing and using the lens in the night like in the day. And you can use IF and you can get the shots you want. That is why I really love Canon's implementation. And as such, this is, to me, the best 135 today. Image quality not much different from the Sony, but because of its IS, its stability on the Canon platform, and the autofocus that doesn't get distracted so easily, I prefer this over what I get in the Sony system. And to me, at least for now, in my first initial review, this is the best 135mm that I have tested so far. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this short little video. And I'll see you in part 2 of the review, maybe in a week or 2 time. Till then, bye-bye.